Hello, everyone, and welcome to the VoxWork podcast. I'm your host, Asmogan, and these are my co-hosts.
My name is Nathan X 2000. Pleasure being here with you gentlemen once again this fine week.
And my name is Nico 40K. Oh, it's a pleasure to be among such wonderful guys.
Truly and indeed. Today, we have 3 topics for you wonderful folks, as well as the community questions and fan art, which will be showcased either at the beginning here, where if I get to it in editing, or at the end, if I get to it in editing. So, our first topic, and we're going to jump right on into things, see if we can move things along in an efficient manner. Since I am the king of tangents, that is a pipe dream, but I can hope. So, topic number 1 was Warhammer Old World a good idea, and how is it going? So, we talked a little bit before the recording started, so this is mostly leaning on me?
Yeah, most certainly.
Okay.
Mostly, but I've got a few points I can raise because as I was thinking about it,
All right.
from what I've heard of Baal, or at least I'll let you go first. But from what I've heard of Baal, I've kind of got an answer generated if I felt what happened to Warhammer Fantasy were to happen to 40k. That'd be how I generate my opinion. So yeah, you go ahead, King.
Okay. Well, Warhammer Old World. Now, there's obviously will be debated. There are people who would debate this point because I have no doubt that people have started collecting Bretonnia, have started collecting Tomb Kings, and any other Old World factions that they can get their hands on at the moment, and they're super excited and they're hopeful for it. But to be perfectly frank, I've been paying attention to the conversation, to the discourse about it, and also to how much GW has kind of pushed it or talked about it since its official launch. And it's pretty bad at the moment. Warhammer Old World, there was a little bit of hype leading up to it, and it kind of puttered out immediately upon coming out. And I've heard next to nothing except negative things since. Now, I have a few comments about why that is, and I could certainly theorize on why Warhammer Old World is not doing so good right now. But before I do, what did you guys think about the hype and everything leading up to Old World? You know, I'm sure we all were hearing about it and talking about it. It was circling the community pretty thoroughly. So, what would you guys say the community was generally ready to shit on it, or did you think there was a lot more hopeful excitement? Because I got a little bit more hopeful excitement from the community than I did this the more skepticism we tend to see.
Almost certainly. I think in general, because of how the end times effectively killed the setting of Warhammer. So the idea of bringing back the old world after, the mixed, let's charitably say the mixed reception of the Age of Sigmar, having the old world again, at least gives us some kind of hope of bringing people into Warhammer Fantasy. And this was actually something I was excited for a little bit, because the thing is, I find it easier to get into 40k than Warhammer Fantasy. A little bit. Because, because, well, the old world that was, I've heard from many people, this is, without the old world, without the original Warhammer, we would not have 40k. So I do almost feel like it is important to have the original fantasy setting, to the same heights as 40k. I think that's only deserving. But with the disastrous launch of the repurposed Old World, I don't know. I'm having a bit of second thoughts. I mean, I hope it's gonna go better than the end times, but I don't know. I don't think they're not really starting on their best foot, at least from what I've experienced.
No, they're not, and it's been pretty bad. Again, I'll get into it, but before I do, Nathan, generally, what was your vibe you were getting from the community before Old World came out?
Okay, so this isn't my obviously big official answer to the topic question, but the vibe beforehand, I was sensing a decent amount of kind of excitement. I didn't obviously there were a lot of skeptics as there tends to be on sort of our side of the fence, given GW's reasoning and the
track record.
sort of like the production of models, as well as the resignation of older stuff. If you get me, like maybe a new world, they would put out new models, but they would make all the old previous models of fantasy, like not valid in tournaments, which is where a lot of the criticism was coming from that I was finding. Well, equal parts, a lot of people were excited because it's now like fantasy coming back, but I think people got starved of fantasy so much, and I think people were a lot of people, I mean, apart from, a friend Litany, who's like very sort of like, yeah, Sigma, woo.
Major AOS.
But I think a lot of people were so dissuaded by Sigma and how they sort of took the way GW handled that. They were kind of glad to see fantasy back. It's sort of like, being locked up in a prison and being fed breadcrumbs. It's not exactly nutritious, but you'll take anything at this point.
Yeah.
So in equal parts, there was concern, which I'm very sort of on board with, but equal parts, which I can understand. There was sort of excitement, fantasy's coming back, it's not going to be shitma. Stormcast fucking everything.
Yeah, I would say I agree with both of you guys for the most part. Although I would say if I had to ratio things, I definitely got more of a positive leaning from the community. And this is, keep in mind, I'm not talking just like our community. I mean like all of Warhammer community. Like the general vibe I got across the whole community was positive. Like a lot of people were excited for it. Like AOS fans were excited for it because they were finally going to get the old Warhammer Fantasy Battles crew stop harassing them and being like, fuck you and your Age of Shitmar, because there'd finally be something they can actually dedicate positive energy towards. And the old Warhammer Fantasy Battles crowd were excited for it because they get to play Warhammer Fantasy Battles essentially again, but by a different name. That seemed to be the general hype. And again, it came crashing down immediately as the game launched and as some new information came out just before launch. So to kind of go into it, and I might be providing you guys information you didn't know. So feel free to tell me if like any of this is news to you guys. But what has led to not necessarily Old World dying? It hasn't died yet, but we're already seeing GW knowing GW's track record with new projects and not seeing immediate, success kind of coming in with them. There's a chance Old World may actually not go any further than it has because its launch has been pretty bad. So to kind of go into it from tackling it from the angles of like each of the pillars of the community, and what I mean by that is with Warhammer, especially 40k, but it's also there for AOS and Warhammer Fantasy Battles. There are different pillars, so to speak, that kind of make up like the community. And, some people who collect the miniatures may not be interested in lore. People who are interested in lore may not collect the miniatures. And there might be people who like the outside media, like comics and video games and stuff that aren't related to either. So generally speaking, like the three pillars of the Warhammer communities, plural, is lore, miniatures, and community. And then arguably a fourth pillar is like all the excess media. For like Warhammer 40k, that would be like Dawn of War. For AOS, that'd be... I actually don't know.
Realms of Ruin.
Realms of Ruin, I guess. Like,
Yeah.
That'd be like the fourth pillar. Like it's the excess media.
Right.
So tackling that from each of the pillars, I'll go one at a time. So the first thing is kind of the lore. Warhammer Fantasy Old World is not taking place in the old world as we think of the old world of Warhammer Fantasy Battles, which most people, when they said that before this game came out, they were referring to before end times. So Warhammer Fantasy, as its lore and timeline was established. Warhammer Fantasy Old Worlds does not take place during that time frame, and in fact, it takes place way before, like over 1,000 years plus before, I believe. So this is like a prequel of prequel. So this is a uncharted quote unquote territory of the lore.
Okay.
And why that has led to being a misstep outside of the obvious, well, a lot of Warhammer Fantasy Battles fans wanted to come back to Warhammer Fantasy Battles, like to the lore and to the characters and to the events that they were enthralled by before End Times. That's what they wanted to go back to. This doesn't cater to that, but even more so, this is a time period that's little is known about, and seemingly, keep in mind, I'm not a Warhammer Fantasies nut job, so I had no idea. Like, maybe there is lore about this time period that Old Worlds takes place in, but from what I've picked up, it seems that it's meant to be a time frame that little is known about, but it's before a lot of the factions and characters that was established in Warhammer Fantasy Battles existed. So that's a huge blow to the Warhammer Fantasy Battles and AOS fan base, because a lot of the things that would have been a draw for them to come back to, from being, as you said yourself, Nathan, being starved of any Warhammer Fantasy, like, old school content, this doesn't feed them, because it's not that stuff. It's from way before, to differentiate itself for whatever reason. I don't know why. And to kind of semi-lean from the lore side of things right into another one of the pillars, which is the tabletop, the actual miniatures. Do you guys know what... Actually, let me ask it like this. What's the most popular Warhammer Fantasy faction?
Ooh,
That's
I
difficult.
don't think that's a question I can answer, because
I think an
given out-
argument could.
Really?
Yeah, go ahead, Nathan.
Yeah, no, because I know a shit ton of people that love the Tomb Kings, the Orcs, Bretonia. Few people I know love Chaos. You know,
Yeah,
like I've not.
I'm talking about the
Because
faction
I'm
that
not
everybody loves. Maybe not everybody's favorite, but everyone loves this faction.
Oh, a faction that everyone loves.
Yeah.
My best guess, would be. I mean, to be fair, you know, going off.
I would say Skaven.
Yeah. Skaven or Orcs.
I was
Okay.
leaning towards Skaven, but
Okay.
I'm surprised you guys didn't immediately say that before I even finished my sentence.
I was gonna say it right after Nathan, but yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, like in equal parts, you've got Skaven supremacists, and then you've got like Dwarven supremacists. So you know,
Yeah.
like I've seen both sides.
Well, I would say generally, like, even non-Warhammer Fantasy fans like us, for the most part. Like, the three of us are not fantasy guys. So as we're talking about this, to be fair, like, we don't have a huge stake in it. That being said, hearing stories from Ball, who is the old guard of the community, and his stories from back in the day, I always wanted to get Warhammer Fantasy, but because of what he described was no longer in existence, and what was left behind was AOS, that, if anything, only turned me off more from AOS and made me lose interest in looking into Old World, because, well, at the time there was no game to support it and nothing really left of it. It was ended, so it kind of lost fervor for me. But anyway,
Yeah.
On point to it. So yeah, Skaven. Skaven's generally like the most loved faction. Maybe not everyone's favorite. Like, again, there are people whose favorite might be Empire, might be Tomb Kings, might be dwarves, orcs, etc. But everyone knows, and in some degree, I would argue, likes/loves the Skaven. Maybe loves
I
to
would
fight
agree.
them, maybe loves their aesthetic, maybe loves just the quirkiness of them. But generally speaking, there's something about the Skaven that I think appeals to nearly everybody.
Yeah, I would agree.
They are not in Old World
What?
at all. Like, period.
Yeah, I knew.
Oh.
And
Yeah, I did know about this on launch. That was one of my main criticisms of, because even though I don't know a lot about fantasy has a fucking ton of factions that they've expanded on.
Mm-hmm.
And if you looked at like Old World's lineup when it released, holy shit, I felt bad for you guys.
Yeah.
You guys as in like the audience who had invested, but oh my god, that is dirty.
That was
For-
bad. And the worst part is they officially announced it. I want to say, like, it felt like it was only a week, but I think it might have been a month before Old World was set to officially launch with the Bretonian box and the Tomb Kings box. Like, that's when they, in the Warhammer community page, like, announced, like, hey, these are the factions that are present during this time period, and here's the ones that weren't. and thus these are the factions we're supporting, and then here's the ones we're not. So yeah, Skaven are not in Warhammer Fantasy Old World.
For all of Age of Sigmar's faults, and I'm sure someone is going to say a bunch of faults. For all of the faults, they had a bunch of factions, and the Skaven are one of the best factions. And I would say they're not necessarily ruined within Age of Sigmar. So not having them in the old world, it annoys me.
Yeah, and that feeling you get, you're annoyed, but we're 40k fans. Imagine being a fantasy fan.
Oh,
That's why I felt bad for them, because like imagine one of the most popular factions out there. You know, I didn't say it before because like I said, my experience with fantasy, I don't feel qualified to answer like what is a faction that everyone loves, but Skaven is definitely like one of the top answers up there due to like the aesthetics and how they operate.
Oh yeah,
and that's like that's basically like them, going into maybe, I don't know, them releasing a new version of 40k, but for some reason the orcs and the guardsmen are not available on release.
That would be so bullshit.
Yeah, exactly. Like answering this from a purely 40k lens, you can like take a lot of things that are happening now and give them a 40k equivalent. So the fact that they didn't get fucking Skaven, that was a kick in the dick.
Oh yeah, and for the people out there who might be staunchly defending Old World for cope reasons, probably, who are gonna say, "Oh, it's just one faction. It's just a faction here and there. What's it matter? It's not like it ruins anything." I would say yes, it does, and the reason not adding Skaven is such a death knell for Old World isn't just because everybody likes Skaven and they're not there, so everybody's disappointed they're not gonna see them on the tabletop or can't play them. It's because it's like the closing of the cell door in a prison. It makes it real. It makes you realize the truth of the situation. Like up to that point, you can delude yourself, but without the Skaven there, it's like the closing of the cell door. That bang, it makes you realize something. And what do you realize? That Old World is not Warhammer Fantasy Battles by another name. It's something different. And because of that, the very reason it exists, the very reason people would have been interested in it, is made null and void. It made people realize that this isn't Warhammer Fantasy Battles Classic being brought back with a different name and they can play their old game again with official support. That's not what this is. So not adding the Skaven is more than just a faction not being there. It's giving people it gave people, I should say, the realization that this is not the game that they thought it was going to be. And more than just a Skaven not being there, and feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, because I might be, because I talked to Ball about this, and I believe I saw it being confirmed. But Chaos, I almost said Chaos Space Marines, but Chaos Warriors / Norska. I think they are going to be, or if not already, are in Old World. You know what's not?
Already in Old World?
Demons.
Well,
what?
The guys who worship Chaos. It might be the reverse of this. It might be demons are there in the no, I'm pretty sure I have it right here. But Chaos Warriors are going to be there, but Chaos isn't. Like demons.
But huh? I'm trying to wrap my head around that. Ow.
Yeah,
make
that make sense.
That actually gave me a headache. Jesus.
Who do we worship? We don't know. When are we going to find out? I don't know. 2 or 3 months, I guess. I could just imagine like a bunch of Chaos Warriors, but like, do you know where they draw the sigils on the bodies and the armor? It's just like one of those fucking those Gary's mod missing textures because they don't know who they're worshipping yet.
Actually, you want to know the full list outside of the Demons of Chaos not being included? Which I did just double check. It is the Demons that weren't included. The Chaos Warriors are going to be there. but not the Demons of Chaos. Make that make sense. But outside of them and the Skaven, vampire counts aren't going to be in the game. I don't know if they've been confirmed to not be added, period, but vampire counts on launch and for the near future are not going to be in Warhammer Old World. Neither are Dark Elves, nor the Ogre Kingdoms, nor the Lizardmen, and nor Chaos Dwarves.
And this was supposed to be the brand new launch. It's like, from just that alone, it feels like an argument to go back to Age of Sigmar.
Yeah, I'm looking at the core factions now. And Asmo, tell me if any of these hasn't been released already. So there's the Empire of Man.
I don't believe they've released a box set for them. Yeah, because so far, unless I missed something, all that's actually currently available is Tomb Kings and Bretonnians.
So there's the core factions of Empire of Man, Orc and Goblin tribes, which I've seen nothing from, Dwarven Mountain Holds, Warriors of Chaos, Kingdom of Bretonia, Beastmen Brayherds, Wood Elf Realms, Tomb Kings of Khemri, and High Elf Realms.
Yeah,
those are like the core factions. That's
so the three factions I'm certain that they've actually got like model support for, at least right now, is Orc and Goblin tribes, Bretonians, and Tomb Kings. Those other ones that you mentioned, I think that's their, like, for video games, it'd be like the development cycle plan of like an early access game, effectively. They're gonna workshop them in, but I don't believe they're available yet, unless I missed that.
Yeah, no, sorry. It says on the website, certain factions people remember from Warhammer Fantasy Battles are not part of the narrative we're telling with the old world, but will be provided with rules at the launch of the game. Dark Elves, Skaven, Vampire Counts, Demons, Ogre Kingdoms, Lizard Men, and the Chaos Dwarves. How the fuck are you gonna have those factions but not tell a narrative with them? Surely some of those factions are like the most, maybe not the most popular, but the most interesting to delve into. Like the Demons of Chaos. You know, arguably the closest thing you're gonna get to a universal bad guy in the fucking franchise. And it's, you know, it's actual Demons of Chaos. Same with the Vampire Count. Like, as much as I don't play fantasy, I like listening to the lore sometimes. And I love the lore between the Vampire Count and the Tomb Kings. Because if I'm not mistaken, the vampires, the sort of access to immortality, comes directly from the Tomb Kings and their ancient rituals, unless I'm getting that the wrong way around. But as far as I know, the Vampire Count, like, they heavily rely on Tomb King lore because
I know that they're
of Tomb
sourced
King
from the same place. Like the Vampire Counts and the Tomb Kings both get from Nagash, I believe.
Yeah. Well, obviously, you know, Nagash sort of came up first with the old.
By the way, YouTube algorithm bot that really likes to go after people, we're saying Nagash, not the other word. Still working the kinks on that freaking bot.
Although for only $10.99 a month, you can listen to the VoxWorks Uncut, where we say the spiciest words.
The Nathan Special.
Yeah, the Nathan Special.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting the wording
like a restaurant meal
that you just read off, though. Like, we're not going to be telling stories with them, but
we're going to include them.
They're going to include them. That's interesting.
Yeah,
I wonder if that.
Like, it's a waste of narrative.
It is a waste of narrative, but like just from a model standpoint, I had heard that the Skaven and the others that I listed off weren't going to be added, period. So, at least from a tabletop playing perspective, I'm now, like, it's interesting, that wording. So I'm wondering if what's going to happen there is that they're actually going to support the models for those factions and actually, like, produce rulebooks and everything. Like, are they going to go that far? I mean, with how badly the launch for Old World has gone, probably not, let's be honest. But, like, their initial plan, right? What was it? I'm not sure. With that wording, you can interpret it as they were going to make models for all these factions, and they were going to do all that support.
Yeah, models I'm not too sure, but it says at the very end, I'll reiterate, but will be provided with rules. So I'm guessing with the reworks that happened at the start of the old world, I'd imagine the other factions did get reworks as well. So I can imagine.
Oh, okay. I think I know the. So I think the way we're supposed to interpret that is, like, we're not going to produce new models for those. We're only going to produce models for old world for like the characters we are doing narratives with stuff
Yeah.
with. But like, we'll give you rule for those of you who still have those old fantasy armies. Like, we'll give you rules to play this game with. For those.
Yeah, that's why I interpreted it. Like,
Yeah.
basically just fluffing up the old stuff, but nothing like brand new. Like nothing like remade, just revamped.
Actually, to be fair, this actually kind of leads into the next, or continuing on with like the tabletop pillar of like criticism. Outside of like those factions not being available and not being supported, have you guys actually seen the physical models that were being released in plastic for Bretonnia and Tomb Kings and Orc Goblin tribes?
I've seen the models, but I can't criticize them. That would be an entirely you thing, Asmo, because you're like you're pure hobby.
Yeah.
I'm not quite that level yet.
From of them I've seen, I saw one person do an unboxing of an assembly of the Tomb King box. I haven't seen like the full breakdown of the Bretonian box, to be fair, but from what I've seen, the vast majority, if not all, of the models are just plastic sculpts of all of the old Warhammer Fantasy models. Like, they're not new. Like, the models and designs and details have not been updated. They lazily recasted their old metal models into plastic. That's it.
Please don't tell me they've done that.
It's based on what I saw for the Tomb Kings. Seemed to be the case. Didn't seem like there was a single new bit in there. Again, I could be wrong. I know at the very least the majority of it was definitely the old sculpts from, like, we're talking like the 80s.
Because if that is the case, that's kind of semi-depressing. Like, what was the fucking point in even bringing it back then in its own setting? If all you're gonna do is again, not remake everything, but just sort of vamp it, polish it a little bit.
Actually, yeah, I just pulled up the actual like website, the Warhammer's shop. Let me share my screen. It is the old sculpts. It's just the old sculpts.
Let me see.
So old skulls.
Like, these are the molds and designs from the 80s
Jesus
and 90s.
fuck.
Wow.
See?
You can actually tell. You can tell the fucking design.
Yeah.
And like, I recognize a lot of Tomb King stuff as well because you guys obviously know Lancer, don't you?
Mm-hmm.
Huge Kings fan. Like, he kit bashes a shit ton of his stuff with like Necrons. Oh my fucking god! I recognize some of these models.
Yeah, you can tell that these are, yeah, look at that. Those are the old sculpts that they did with clay back in the day that they used for the molds.
Why does the skull of that horse look like the skeleton version of like the troll face when like it just plays bad to the bone guitar riffs? It's like banana, a quirky little smile.
Oh yeah, like this is another major thing. Like, outside of the stuff we've already talked about, it's like, so to summarize a little bit for like bullet points real quick, just so far for like the negatives, and to be fair, I'm going over the biggest ones. Skaven and a bunch of other really popular factions for Warhammer Fantasy Battles, it will not and is not supported with new box sets, and apparently they're only getting new rules for Old World. So that's already really bad, and made a lot of people realize that this isn't what they were hoping it was. And on top of it, the other side that people could have made an argument to support Old World, well, at least these factions are getting new models. They're not. They're releasing the old sculpts in plastic.
It's absurd.
So if you were
Right,
if you were really really wanting to get like the old sculpts, but you just wanted them in plastic, well, congrats. But to everybody who wanted, updated models, like if we go to AOS and we go to, I don't know, let's just pick one at random.
Asmo, sorry. Just a quick question before you carry on.
Mm.
So with the release of these, and I'm using the biggest fucking quotation marks possible, like new models, does this mean that the old original equivalent models from back in the day with the OG release of Fantasy, did they become not allowed anymore?
I will say probably the one positive here is that those ones would still apply. That I did hear, this is what I've heard, so this very well may be incorrect. This is word to mouth. I've heard that they've changed the base size. So a lot of people whose old armies are of the old sculpts that match these quote unquote new plastic ones, though the model itself will look the same because it's the same sculpt. It's just one was metal or pewter, now they're plastic. But the base size has changed. So where before I think it was like 25, 28, something like mid 20 millimeters. Now it's like 28, so it's like slightly bigger or slightly smaller. I'm not entirely sure. But I know that
wait, what the fuck? Why would you increase the base size? Doesn't that
technically speaking, they're not increasing the base size because this isn't Warhammer Fantasy Battles. This is Old World.
Yeah, from a technicality point of view, but
I'm not saying that in defense of them. I'm saying that people can hear the idiocy of that argument.
Although
I'd still argue that point massively because it's a re-release of an old franchise. Why the fuck would you increase the base size? Wouldn't you make less models on an official tabletop sort of setting? Like, wouldn't that be kind of an issue for spacing if you increase the base size?
It does, absolutely.
Especially by nearly a half.
Yeah, like I'm pretty sure that was another huge controversy, and I was going to bring it up. And keep in mind, I could be wrong by the details. So any Warhammer Fantasy battles / Old Worlds, people who've been paying better attention to like the actual minute details like that, if I'm wrong, feel free to tell us in the comments because I very well might have that one was a word to mouth thing. I didn't see that in an official post. But from what I've seen, that was another controversy with Old World, is a lot of people who weren't going to buy like the Tomb Kings or weren't going to buy the Bretonnian box and were just going to use their old models, they like looked into the rules, and the rules like denoted like the base sizes, and they had realized that hundreds of their models, they had to break the bases and the models off of each other so they could glue them on new bases that were the appropriate size. Now, I think some people may found a loophole with that using unit trays, but that's like the only thing I saw that kind of counteracted it, and that was like a community thing. That wasn't GW. So that's been another controversy with Old World, is the base sizes alteration from what Warhammer Fantasy Battles was. So honestly, like the more and more.
Oh no, you're right.
Yeah.
No, just checked. Yeah, they did. Yeah, they did up the base sizes.
Yep. Yeah. So that has also resulted in like all of these factors so far. Like when Old World was first pitched, I think we all had the same interpretation, right? This is to cater to the Warhammer Fantasy Battles fans that would not and will not play Age of Sigmar, right? That was the clear grab from GW, and we all thought it was a smart move, right? Like so many Warhammer Fantasy Battles fans never touched AOS. And would never. So why not cater to them and give them what they want, which is the actual Old World as we thought of it. But yet every step of the way, as we've gone over just so far, does any of this sound like they're catering to the old fans of Old World? Like the Old World we actually accepted, not this crap.
No.
Like they're leaving out entire factions from Warhammer Fantasy Battles. They're doing it. The setting is in a completely different time period that interconnects and intersects with none of our favorite characters except maybe like Cetra, for example, for Khemri and the Tomb Kings, and one or two other undead characters. But like every other major character, nope. Entire factions not even being used in the lore, nope. Some that doesn't even make sense not to use. Like they're planning on using Chaos Warriors, but not Demons of Chaos. That still sticks with me a bit. It's like, huh?
Now, I'm sure someone would make the argument that they wanted to, for the old world, they wanted to start off, just small, not rushing things immediately, because we've all seen how, with other projects that just rushed, it just ended up being disaster. But removing factions just outright, to what does that serve? It doesn't serve the original fantasy fans. It doesn't serve anyone who might be interested. Like, I may have been interested back when old fantasy battles was around, and I wanted to get into it. But again, this is just another barrier to entry for Warhammer Fantasy. And also to an earlier point that you mentioned about how they were just using old models. I'm looking at the models that you have on screen right now. These look gorgeous, and updating the old world with a new style, it would look so good.
Yeah, those are AOS models I'm showing, by the way.
Yeah. And that's the thing. It's like, it would be such an easy idea. Well, I'm sure it would be difficult to make them, obviously. I have no idea how plastic manufacturing is, but look at these. This is just the old world ones. They just look so low effort.
Because, well, to be fair, before we insult them too much, these are from the 80s when they were sculpting them with like clay and shit, and they didn't have the digital tools to digitally sculpt at such minute detail. So these were done by hand. So to be fair to these sculpts, before we call them too ugly, they are ugly, like objectively, compared to like what you can do with digital sculpting and the level of detail you can capture with that. But yeah, like for a tabletop game that you're releasing, in what, like, it wasn't even a few months ago, but 2023, at the very end of 2023, and you're using sculpts from the 80s.
Now, maybe an argument could be made that with updated models of the old 80s, selling alongside the ones that look like the original, like the ones you showed, I'm sure someone would want it for the nostalgia factor, maybe. But just having the ones from the 80s, I don't know.
Yeah, but what made sorry, go ahead, Nathan.
Sorry, I was gonna say, when you mentioned that the sculpts from the 80s, like, I wouldn't have necessarily, criticized the appearance, because, when you look at it from the lens of the fact that it came out in the 80s, they look, they don't actually look that bad, like, given the tools that they had back then.
They look great.
Digital design tools weren't exactly sort of.
Yeah, the criticism isn't
that widespread back then.
Yeah, the criticism isn't that they look bad necessarily. I mean, they do, if compared to modern models with the modern sculpting ability that they have, but really the criticism is that you have the modern methods, right? This is a new game by pretty much all your own admission. You've done everything in your power outside of your initial advertisement, which was saying, hey, Old World's coming back, and then everything you've done since is to spit in the face of that idea. But that was your initial pitch. And if this is this new game, as you've pushed in every other angle since, by leaving out entire factions and stressing this is a different time period, blah, 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 then at the very least you owe us new models then. Like, you can't expect people to be satisfied with the same old sculpts, just now in plastic. Like that, and also with the point of like that catering to nostalgia. For some people, I'm sure it would be, like, if you never got to collect those models. But honestly, like, I think for new people getting into Warhammer Fantasy Battles, you're not gonna have the nostalgia. Like, you never played the old one. You were just interested in getting into it now because you heard so many stories from your old community members, right? Like, for us, it would be Ball. Like, hearing stories from him. We, at least me, like, getting into the same game he described, like, I don't have the nostalgia of like those old models and those old designs, so I don't see these old sculpts and think, oh, I really want those. And even if I did, wouldn't I want, for the collectible sake, the actual old models, like the metal models that you could find on eBay, like secondhand and stuff? Wouldn't you want to get your hands on the actual models that are that old, that are from that time period, not resculpt copies made in plastic now? Because part of what has that collectability, part of what has that that genuine like adoration from the community comes from the fact that those models are from that bygone era. If you just buy a plastic resculpt of the same thing now, it's a sculpt that's only a couple months old, made at GW. Like, it doesn't have that connection from back then, and the fact that you understand that it's made today, where it shouldn't look like this anymore, because they have the technology to make far more detailed and better might be the only word I can use here, because I know people are going to make the argument like, well, they're not necessarily better, this is like, but I'll use that word, don't get too technical with me, but better models than they could do from back then because of our modern tools and talent. It feels just like a cheap knockoff. It's like, oh, you wanted old world, here's the old models. It doesn't feel like this is an homage as much as it is laziness. You just didn't want to give us new models.
To be completely fair, I'd imagine the best course of action from GW's point of view should have been, maybe if they wanted to rescan and redo all the old models, they should be made to order. But just give everything like a new model straight off the bat. So you've got a reason to kind of buy the new models. Or you've got a reason to sort of like justify the re-release of an old franchise, but at the same time, if people did want to experience the nostalgic sort of side of things, like Nico, you'd rightfully mentioned, you should be able to like made to order, like maybe there should be like a legacy series, or like maybe you can have the legacy designs, which might be like a cool thing to show off, like as a nice homage to where it all started, because Fantasy came out before 40k, didn't it?
Oh yeah,
yep.
Well before.
So truly, there should be an homage to things that came before, and an homage to the skill and talent that we had in the 80s that were producing these models. Are they the best looking models from the 80s? I can imagine a few franchises that did it better, but in terms of like the scale and quality, they're very actually, like when you look at it through an 80s sort of lens, they're pretty good.
Yeah.
So there's several different reasons to have homages to like, what used to be from a bygone era when GW actually fucking cared about its franchises. Just my opinion. Like, you can,
I agree. I think it would be best to have it as a made to order, because there are going to be people who are nostalgic about it. But
with that being the case, I think if you're going to do made to order, and they already charge a shit ton for all their models anyway, I think they should still do new sculpts as like the standard for everything in the old world. And for those who want to get those old models, maybe if you're going to go as far as just keep in my opinion, if you want to avoid just being seen as lazy and just copy and pasting your old sculpts and not bothering to make new ones for a brand new game by your own acknowledgement, then at the very least, you kind of owe, like, if you're going to do that and have those made to order, they should also be made of the old material. So make them metal, make them pewter.
Yeah. Well, I mean, when I said that before, like that wasn't like going into detail about every sort of facet of like re-releasing them, if you get me, but just like the idea of it. But yeah, I agree. I mean, especially with those price tags, because GW are known. They've been known for years for being too fucking frivolous with their price tags, given like the switch and everything to plastic to make it a lot more affordable to print, but they're still charging as if they were made of pewter and metal.
Well, yeah.
Like, holy shit! Right, hang on. No, go to the top left thing. The mounted yeoman command. 36 fucking quid for that. 36. That is disgusting.
Those are definitely
36
sculpts.
Yes. Yeah, but that's the charm of them, though. That's what. That's kind of like the old school. Because like, look at the dude in the yeah. Look at the face on that dude.
I go at the battle.
I see chaos. I do not like chaos.
That horse is just like, what am I doing
Yeah,
here?
yeah, he's so tired. He's like, oh my god, I'm gonna scream in Jeb End on my back like for fucking years. She's the
Horsey, go that way. Kill chaos.
This one looks
this is getting
asleep.
animated.
This one looks asleep.
It looks asleep.
It looks asleep, but it's the same. Oh wait, no. Wait, hang on. Wait, no. Is that this? No, it's not. No, it's not. But it's very minutely different. Yeah.
If I had to guess from like the old '80s clay sculpts, they probably did them side by side and were doing them, and then at the end they realized they were sculpting two of the identical, so they made slight adjustments.
Yeah, it looked identical on first glance. But to be fair, from the '80s, that was like that is completely fair.
Yeah.
But again, that's the '80s. Like, I don't justify that doing that now. Like,
for a new game by like their own push, right?
Like,
they've stressed Old World is not Warhammer Fantasy Battles ever since they first announced it.
By their own definition.
Yeah, like then give us new models. If that's the case, you have no place copy and pasting the old ones and calling it good.
Like, Asmo, the amount of streams that you've done and the amount of time I've seen you spend on your own settings stuff, you know, those days and nights that you spent in, what was the modeling software? Was it Maya?
ZBrush and Maya.
Was that ZBrush? Yeah, sorry. I have seen the amount of things that you can, like, sort of offset in terms of, like, model differences, and the fact that they couldn't be asked to fucking do that. They are re-releasing something that from a time it made sense to kind of make slight alterations. But now with like current 3D tools where you can sort of envision something before you print it in its full scale. That's fucking... It's kind of bad when it's lazy, but it for GW does not surprise me. I hate that it doesn't surprise me.
Yeah.
And again, like, I've got no horse in this race, no pun intended from the models that we've just seen. You know, I've got no horse in this race whatsoever. But initially, you know, especially from the criticisms that I was thinking about, you know, with like model regression as well as there's no justification to re-release the old shit apart from fluffed up rules, which is the only new thing I'm seeing. To be fair, I genuinely feel for fantasy players like this is the best of an update that you're gonna get.
Yeah,
Which again is another justifiable position of keep your old shit because the new shit's gonna be so much worse.
And for anyone watching who may be, you know, trying to like compartmentalize like all this, or maybe like you're newer to 40K or newer to tabletop gaming in general, or if you're watching and you're more of a gamer and you just like my channel and like all of us personality wise, and none of this is really your shtick, to kind of give you a little bit of another way to think about this. This is like a video game company, right? Taking an old video game, announcing, hey, we're going to be making, let's use an example. Let's say the folks who do Age of Empires. Let's say they're like, hey, we're going to be making an Age of Empires Ancient. And then all of their advertisement references the very first Age of Empires game. Or let's just say Age of Empires 2, which is more popular. Like they reference that specifically. They point to it. They do a bunch of nods to it. So everyone's thinking, oh, it's like a really trumped up or a really hyped up remake or reboot of Age of Empires 2. And then as soon as they make that announcement and make those nods to it, everything after it is like, okay, here's all of the factions that were in Age of Empires 2. Now we're going to remove half of them. And those out of that half, we're going to remove the most popular ones. We're also going to, instead of make brand new 3D models and animations and programs, we're literally going to copy the game code and all of the old models and put it in the game. Except we're going to change the values of each of the models just slightly so we can argue, well, it's different from the original. A la the base size change from from Warhammer Fantasy Battles to Warhammer Old World. Like, you make those slight alterations, and then they're like, all right, we want $70.
To be fair,
It's the same thing.
You could have actually used the recently released Battlefront 2 collection.
Yeah.
Example.
Yeah, actually, that is very fucking good. That is perfect, actually. What they've done with Old World is the exact same shit that company did with Battlefront and Battlefront 2 with that classic bundle thing. It's the exact same shit. They changed nothing, and they asked for like a bunch of money, and they did nothing to earn it.
And they also made the multiplayer worse.
Yeah.
Which how do you
yeah.
do?
And like, and also like, for some people that might argue the fact that, well, you know, they put the Xbox exclusives on all the platforms. Yeah, that's still not making anything new. You're just re-releasing the old shit on different platforms. You're making it more accessible, but you've not made anything.
Mm-hmm.
If you wanted to argue for a remaster, you could literally just mod the game.
Yeah,
the
exactly.
Original. I literally did that, and it looked
Same.
way better. It works better.
Yeah, like, yeah, the fucking KOTOR expansions, the Mandalorian expansions, the 501st Secret Campaign mods.
Yeah.
It always is, like, even with, like, modeling stuff, you know, when people making their own custom sculpts, it's always the community that has to prop up the shit that the officials are actually doing.
Oh, yeah.
Fucking it. So, yeah, for... like, again, for anyone who's like proper into fantasy watching, I genuinely feel for you.
I'm here for you, bro.
So,
bros.
So yeah, to kind of sum up topic number 1 with Warhammer Old World. Yeah, it's really bad, really, really bad right now, and I feel bad for the people who were hyped for it. I really do, because I was, we never hear about these things. We want them to be bad. I don't think the few people that do, they're assholes. But the rest of us, you know, when we hear about stuff like this, we want to be positive, excited, and think of the best. Like,
yeah,
when Old World came out and like everybody had the same thoughts as each other, like, hey, it's gonna be Warhammer Fantasy Battles, but new models and like a revamp of the rules, and we're gonna get to play the old game again. We're gonna get to do that and have fun. And then it comes out and half the factions are missing, including one of the most popular ones, Skaven. The setting isn't lore-wise even anywhere near the characters or events of things you were impassioned and engrossed in if you were a fan of Warhammer Fantasy Battles. They have shown clearly no effort in the model department. It's just copy and pasted the old sculpts from the 80s into the plastic sculpts and called it a day. And if there are any new models, they're one-offs here and there. But like the vast majority, the bulk amounts of the models are the old stuff.
It's genuinely disheartening because I wanted this to be my new into Warhammer Fantasy. Because I have a very limited experience with Warhammer Fantasy, and I wanted this to be the in. This is where I would fully step into the other side of the Warhammer hobby. And it's just disheartening that this has just come to this.
This is the recommended in from the official company that owns it. Like, yeah, I fucking understand, Nico. I was kind of like thinking along the same lines as you, actually, because I've been invested in solely 40k for so long. Like, only having seen Asmo streams of Total War Warhammer and played Vermintide 2 myself.
Mm-hmm.
I've only had bits and pieces to gather from fantasy, as well as the lore videos I've listened to.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe with the way 40k was going, I might have, like, been able to, just peek across the fence a little bit. Just go, ooh, what's happening with fantasy? And this is just what I'm greeted by. At least officially, there's nothing stopping you from going talking, to the older people in the hobby. Maybe investing in a certain piece of hardware and printing off the old sort of fantasy models, playing games with your mates, painting them, whatever.
Perhaps.
Yeah. But, officially dog shit.
Yep. It's sad. It is. But yeah, that was topic number 1. Was Warhammer Old World a good idea? My answer is no.
Conceptually, it's a good idea.
Yeah, it's a good idea, but with GW, pretty much everything they do, piss poor on execution.
This specific idea, like what they have put into practice for the idea. So what GW?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Good idea, poor execution.
Okay, because their idea was clearly not Warhammer Fantasy Battles, but updated models. Their idea was clearly, let's say that, but then do nothing to back it up and just resell the old models in plastic.
Well, I mean, like, it depends if somebody actually came up with the idea and then a different person got tasked with the execution.
True. All right. By that, was Warhammer Old World a good idea? If they were actually planning on executing a proper revamp of Warhammer Fantasy Battles for the classic fans, then yes, the idea was great. How's it going? God awful. Like, couldn't have bungled it worse, to be honest. Like again, just like these are like AOS models right here. Look at the detail. Look at what they could have done. And granted, that guy's face is ugly, but look at the detail of the shield. Look at all that. Like,
that looks.
Like these are what they could do for detailed models. And instead, we get these fucking things.
18 quid for those 3. So I can, like, I can at least sort of confidently say, because I live in the UK, I can see the pricing of everything, and like how much that money would go a long way.
Keep in mind, Nathan, that this is the British discount. Me and Nico pay almost double this.
Yeah, I know. It was brought up in a previous episode. Don't worry, I know. Again, that's why I'm speaking confidently about it. 18 quid for those 3 is just
ridiculous.
Why? But Warhammer is like, a middle class hobby. You should be expected to pay more. Yeah, but I would only pay more if it's justified. Anyone that pays and gatekeeps in terms of price, saying, "Oh, well, it's reasonable," no one's forcing you to pay for the models. Those are the people that have paid for those models at stupid prices for so long that they have to justify it to themselves and not to anybody coming into the hobby. If GW is so worried about people wanting to come into the hobby as like new players, they should just lower the fucking prices. Like, stop the insane markup. And that's as somebody who lives in the country that they're selling it to. Like Asmo mentioned before, like, go to Iceland, go to America, go to Australia, and the markup is just, oh my god.
Australia, should I get a comic
Australia,
or a house?
Like Australia, I can slightly understand if they were to do a general markup because of the shipping fees, but not to the fucking price range that it is currently. Good luck. Asmo, okay, sorry, it's a quick thing. Look up that same command, but from the Australian. Right, hang on. Pound to Oz.
So in Australian dollars, it's 50.
It's 50?
$50.
18 pounds sterling, which is obviously my currency, is 34, nearly 35 Australian dollars. 14 quid's worth of a markup.
Unbelievable.
People fucking wonder why a lot of people have stopped getting into 40k now. Like,
imagine how much you can use that money. Like, you could buy so many games, like a whole bunch of bundles.
Yeah, it's even worse than us in the US, because in the US that same squad is $32. It's still
hang on. Yeah, so let me
nearly double.
Let me just do it to the regular dollar. So £18 sterling is currently 22. So it's not as big of a markup, but it's still, like, given the fact that it's America, I'm surprised GW have not released a production facility in America to offset a bunch of those prices for the sake of its players.
I'm pretty sure there is. Well, there may not be.
Then that fucking markup is not.
I know there are warehouses here that they pre-stock with stuff.
Yeah, there's warehouses, but are the production facilities?
That's where I have a question mark over my head.
Like, surely, as a company that's wanting to expand into the global sort of market, and maybe to tie this back to the topic of, like, Warhammer, fantasy, the old world, surely with new sort of things that you're releasing, you'd invest in a new production facility, or maybe, like I said in the first episode, maybe like you want to contract all your shit from China and you just want to do the shipping costs from there. Like, I don't fucking know.
But Nathan, that requires them to spend money.
Yeah, I can imagine certain fucking hats and certain amounts of hand rubbing of fucking GW and fucking thinking about money. Jesus Christ.
Are you saying we have to spend money to make money? Well, yes, sir. Fire him. Immediately.
Oi, they go him. They want more bang for their buck. Should we give them better models? Should we print it in a pewter or metal? No. It's scam them. Scam them for everything they've got.
A certain theme song plays in the background.
Da 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 da. I don't fucking care anymore. To be genuine.
All right, I think we've given a pretty firm response to that topic. So, moving
Wait,
on.
hang on. If you want the full rant, remember VoxWorks Uncut for only $10.99. Okay, yeah. Sorry, go on.
All right. So, topic number 2: best experiences we've had personally in the community.
This is at the same time a really narrow question, but very open.
Yeah, it depends on how you want to approach it,
Hmm.
because it's a specific question, obviously, but
Yeah.
it applies to so much.
Oh yeah.
So I suppose is it okay if I go first, or
Yeah.
do you either
Yeah,
you
go ahead.
Go right ahead.
I'll get a bowler. So as well cracks another can.
I fucking heard that.
Yeah, to punctuate it. So yeah, so the best experiences I've had personally in the community is, now this may seem like a cop-out answer, but the community itself. And when I say community, I don't mean the wider community. I'm not lumping in my sort of introduction to everyone who I now know with Sig Marxism and stuff like that.
Mhm.
Like, there are certain facets and there are certain people that I've come to know that are genuinely dishonest, and I don't like that. But the introduction to sort of the community, when Arch first released his video, or like he released a video that Asmo had made, the In the Nutshell series, he got that. Well, he got him to do one of those for you, and it was a nice little content creator shout out. It was through Arch that I found Asmo. It was through Arch that I actually also found the Bickering Bunch, which also has a lot of crossover 40k fandom people. And from there has just been like a gel, like a sort of miasma of like people that sort of all unite under the same idea of 40k. They don't want the shit change. You want to keep stuff the way it is. They want to enjoy what they have. They don't want to allow it to be fucked with in any way. And behind every single person that likes 40k, well, is just that. There's another person to get to know. There's another person to learn whether you want to avoid, but at the same time, there's a person that you also want to learn as a friend as well. Because if it wasn't for me getting into this community, I would have never have met, Asmo, Nicho, fucking Deutschman, that I went to go visit a few years ago. I never would have, like Arctic. I never would have went to go visit Tehe, Uros, and obviously things progressed with one of them. But I would have never have met Lancer, Dragonis, Khan. I'm not gonna list the entire row of people because I think all of us would be aero fucking dead if we did that. But for the people listening, for the people that send in the community questions, you know exactly who we're kind of on about, because we all kind of gel in the same space. But if it wasn't for 40k, I would have never have met all those people. The conversations, the nights of gaming that we've all had, the conversations about 40k, the banter. So yeah, this may seem like a cop-out answer, but the genuine idea of the community itself and having a bunch of like-minded people who have very respectable differences has just been an absolute fucking blast over the years.
Very good answer, actually. I like
Very
it's got
good.
that. Actually, to kind of so that shout out or that's the thing. When it came to me and Arch talking about that way back when, it was his idea.
Oh shit!
Yeah,
Nice.
it was his idea. He DM'd me and we were talking back and forth. This is during one of his a little bit after, honestly, one of his controversies, and he was gonna take some time off, if I recall correctly, from like doing content. I think he was doing a vacation or something, and so he was like, okay, I was thinking of doing like a spotlight on my channel for a couple others, and I think it was me, a Border Prince, and one other person got to basically provide his channel with an uploaded episode of one of our stuff. And, it would help his channel in the algorithm, because the uploads wouldn't stop suddenly while he was taking some time off, and it would help us with exposure. That was the general recollection I have of the conversation. So it was his idea to do that, and I couldn't be more grateful, because it was a very big push for my stuff. And actually it's better than just some half-hearted shout out, to be honest. Like if you had just done a video and be like, hey, by the way, there's these other channels that are really cool, maybe check them out. That's one thing, but it doesn't, viewers don't know if like they want to go for it, because it's like, okay, well, he's saying that, but maybe it doesn't fit my personal tastes. But actually showing our stuff on his channel gave people like a direct, okay, this is something I might be interested in or not. I gave him a taster.
Sorry, like when you mentioned a Border Prince, I just wanted to recheck out his channel because I've not checked it out in a while. And
Same.
So do you know when Arch basically gave him like, are you super sure it's a Border Prince and someone else?
I thought so. I might be wrong.
Because if he did, a Border Prince has a featured section, where you've got like a bunch of channels that you also recommend, like I've got you in there, I've got Nico, you've got Nico, whatever. Arch isn't in there.
I mean, that doesn't necessarily mean anything, to be fair.
If you've given a channel a shout out and you kind of like if you've gained a lot of popularity from like a bigger channel, like basically saying, hey, check out this dude's content, I'd owe it to them. At least in my opinion.
I mean, that's like a person-to-person like thing, though. Like, I won't say that's necessarily indicative. Like, has he made like a video like, exposing Arch or some crap like that, or calling him out?
I'm not saying it's indicative. I'm just saying that's not the best sort of sign for me of a channel who's previously collabed with someone in the past, much bigger, that's gave him a shout out. I'm just saying, if a few other pieces of the puzzle start adding together, that would confirm something for me. But, I'll have to recheck. Yeah, sorry, go on as well.
Oh, yeah, that was... So, the overall gist of it is, it was Arch's idea, and it was a really good one, and I think it was better than just a shout-out, because, again, it gave people a showcase of our content, and I really respected that, I really liked that, and it was really cool of him.
Very nice. Good answer. So, for me, the very best experience... Ironically, this actually came after the very worst experience, but not for 40k. But for, like I've told people beforehand, before I got into 40k, I used to be really big into Star Wars. And then I saw The Last Jedi. I was so angry.
You poor bastard.
I effectively, I just said, I am done with this franchise. I am just so done. And it left a hole within me, because I need something to, kind of invest my time in. It just makes it feel a little bit better, right? So, like I've told before, I knew about 40k, but I didn't really go into it. The best I did was maybe look at a piece of artwork here and there. I thought it was neat, but didn't think it was going to be my thing. Then a few days after I had that horrific experience in the theater, I noticed the 40k stuff. And then I realized this is being sold everywhere within the nerd store I always go to. I actually thought, okay, how about I give this a shot? Next time I go to the shop, I'm just gonna look up this stuff. I go to the aisle, and it is just filled with Warhammer stuff. And I take a look. I look at models from both Age of Sigmar. I both look at for 40k, Necromunta, Kill Team, all this kind of stuff. And I was confused, but I was also intrigued. And one of the other customers was around. He noticed that I was really getting interested in stuff. And he said, "It's like, are you new into 40k?" It's like, yeah, I am. Relatively speaking, I basically don't know anything. And we just had a chat, and he wanted to explain 40k to me. And that conversation went on for 2 hours. And it felt like just 30 minutes. Because the thing is, for me, the best experience in life is usually when I love hearing the passion from other people. I genuinely do. People love to talk shit about the things they hate, but when they talk about something they love, that they've invested, what truly makes it special to them, I listen. I always listen because I feel like a little bit of me. I feel like a part of me starts to understand. It feels like an opening to me to get into said franchise, right? And so I pick up. Well, okay, I don't pick up anything that day, but I look up the lore videos, and it was just a rabbit hole I kept sinking in, and the rest is history. I would say that is the best experience I've ever had with a community. Just the fact that someone was willing to talk to me. Very nice guy. Never saw him again. Very odd. Oh well. But
do you reckon it was like? Do you reckon it was like a ghostly apparition where, like, if you turned around directly to say something to him, he just
it was like
the thin air?
The fairy Grimtalk mother.
The guiding hand of, like, I don't know, like a Nordic god of like consumerism or some shit, just slowly palming you off to 40k.
Who knows? Maybe he was a manifestation of the Astronomicon.
Oh no! The Emperor's breaking the meta. He's broken the fourth wall psychically.
Broke the meta.
Yeah, like when you said like you had a 2-hour-long conversation, I was just thinking that's like the least lengthy lore conversation between two 40k people.
I would say though, this was though by the end of it, I think it was like only 1 hour before closing time because it stays open for like 10 in the night. I was at there like at 8 because I had nothing else to do. Oh, jeez, yeah, that is genuinely, and without that experience, I never would have met such wonderful people. The content of my YouTube channel would have never been made, and I would never have met the two of you. So genuinely, I thank both the community and both the people for having met you. Genuinely, yeah, it is just a light in my day.
Very wholesome, super wholesome.
Very much so.
You guys have better answers than me.
No, yours was fine.
I haven't given mine yet.
Oh, you haven't? No.
No?
Were you thinking of a more specific thing, Asmo?
Oh, yeah, that had been my thought, but
yeah, no, I kind of did get a bit like a little gay and sentimental in my answer, but yeah, just overall, like with community comes new people comes new experiences, new opportunities, good memories to have. You always see it on like normie platforms of like, oh, I miss the days when I get to game with the boys, like have, like hang around with a friend group and stuff. That's kind of one of the benefits of being in an online community is the fact that you get to, I mean, it's a double-edged sword. You get to know people that can either be wildly sort of out of pocket and not what you're used to, whether that be good or bad, or you can get to know people that are like a lot like you, and like a nice little comfortable feeling that you get to hang out with like-minded people. You know, like that comes with any sort of community, but with Warhammer, there's a certain bar of entry given the type of franchise that it is. You know, like chilling out with people like that. You know, like in general, feels very like I said, comfortable.
Mm.
You know, and a lot of likes. You know, if you like 40k, you know, like I can imagine a lot of people that join the 40k community also find a lot of people that love BattleTech as well, and a lot of people that like 40k probably, you know, as yourself, Nico, like Star Wars. So
Yeah.
they sort of revel in the old days of, you know, the old world, you know, the old lore, the expanded universe, you know, stuff like that.
Oh yeah. The amount of hours I wasted.
Mm.
I would just stay up in the night reading up on a couple of the Star Wars comics. It's just some good stuff.
Jesus Christ, like I can imagine you with your reputation about with the Punisher. Fucking hell, like I can imagine you with the Star Wars comics.
Yeah. Dude, I need to finish that Punisher video eventually. I did kind of miss the February window because that's actually the anniversary date. Though, considering that Marvel did nothing with the character, I sort of feel like that's fitting.
Yeah. Sooner rather than later, but at least better late than never.
Yeah, at least this year.
What about you,
sorry,
Asmo?
Sorry, Asmo,
Yeah,
go
it's
ahead.
Well, I guess it's along the same lines as you guys, but again, it's more specific. I probably the biggest and best moment I had so far, anyway. Yeah, hopefully there are. It's gonna be hard to beat, but hopefully there will be better moments. But when I met, it kind of happened in like a 3-in-1. When I met Arctic, Nathan, and Syl, specifically, like towards the very beginning of the Discord community, as well as like my own like YouTube channel, it was around the same time during the Arch controversy. The three of, Nathan, Arctic, and Syl. Yeah, the three of you guys. Oh, there's also Benito, but I haven't heard from him in a long, long time. But
Rest in peace, Benito. He's active on Steam. He's constantly playing games. Like I've not removed him from his Steam list. He's alive.
Yeah. he's alive. I don't know. He probably. I know. Well, I won't talk about that on stream because I don't know if he'd be comfortable with that. But yeah, but excluding him not because he wasn't like significant in the moments or anything, but excluding him just because I just don't know if he wants to be mentioned on this channel.
Not too late now.
Well, I can believe that. if I'm able to get to that point in the editing, like I end up having a lot of crunch time with these. But with that, like that moment when like the three of you around the same day, I want to say around the same day, or at the very least the same week, the three of you guys joined like the Discord, and you know, the community first got started. You guys were the most active, and each of you were kind of like the horsemen to my, like the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, but you guys were like the 4 horsemen to like my life improving.
Oh.
Like,
Aw.
like